Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, no you're not, you've been here the whole time. My name is Kimitivity and today we are going to be talking about welfare. More importantly, what is going on with welfare in this country, specifically the United States. If you're not from the United States, I don't know, you probably have it better. But yeah, I want to talk about sort of the systematic repeals of welfare in this country. With every administration, there's always some new thing that comes up, and it's always usually worse for everybody. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And most specifically, we are going to talk about the term welfare queen. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hi, Editing Kim here. Before we continue, I want to make note of something. Some of the images used in this video are racially insensitive and depict pretty awful stereotypes. I'm including them to prove a point, not to promote that sort of imagery in any way, but if you would rather not see it, I will include timestamps in the description to skip those parts of the video. Who was Linda Taylor? Linda Taylor, born Martha Louise White, was a Chicago woman who is most famously credited with being the original welfare queen. Taylor, originally from Alabama, was born in 1926 to her mother, a Caucasian woman named Lydia White. The identity of Taylor's biological father is unknown, though rumors within her family often said that her father was a black man. If this were true, Linda's mother could have been convicted of a felony under Alabama's law against interracial relationships. So the family in both court testimony and census records always admitted to Linda being white as opposed to mixed or black. Throughout her life, Linda portrayed herself as being a variety of racial and ethnic identities, such as Black, Asian, Hispanic, and Jewish. She also gave varying responses when asked about her age, which ranged from anywhere in her early 20s to her early 50s. She became best known under the name Linda Taylor, but used as many as 80 different aliases, such as Linda Bennett, Connie Jarvis, Linda Jones, Constance Lloyd, Linda Lynch, Linda Myexo, Linda Ray, Constance Rain, Linda Shlovia, Constance Wakefield, and Connie Walker. She even had falsified documents to match each name and wigs to change her appearance. Linda had run-ins with the law from a very young age, having been arrested at least 3 times before the age of 20. She frequently moved around the country and was allegedly married 6 times, twice divorced, with 5 children. She was accused of unaliving someone, kidnapping, theft, drug possession, and prostitution, but was never charged or convicted of these alleged crimes. On August 8, 1974, Linda Taylor filed a police report in Chicago, alleging that she had been robbed of $14,000 in the form of cash, jewelry, and furs. Detectives Jack Sherwin and Jerry Cush recognized Linda from a previous identical report. This led to her coming under suspicion of false reporting. She was investigated and was then suspected of welfare fraud after Detective Sherwin found welfare payment checks made out to multiple different names in her apartment. During this investigation, Linda fled the state. Later that year, the Chicago Tribune published a story titled "Welfare Queen Jailed in Tucson," which is where the term originated from. She was extradited back to Illinois and faced trial. She was found to have committed welfare fraud in both Illinois and Michigan, with a total of over $100,000, about $500,000 today, in illegally obtained funds. The jury deliberated for 7 hours before finding her guilty. And that is the story of the original welfare queen, a rogue woman with a penchant for glamour and a knack for obfuscating the truth. An enigmatic person who almost got away with it. A con artist, a criminal, who lived a life of luxury on the government's dime. But here's the kicker. If Linda Taylor was a white man, we would have seen a Netflix documentary in the style of Ocean's 11 made about her, or him. Her crimes would have been memorialized and not demonized. But Linda Taylor was not a white man. She was a, possibly, black woman who scammed the system. And on the heels of the civil rights movement, her crimes and the color of her skin provided a perfect tool for the political agenda of a very notorious individual, Ronald Wilson Reagan. Reagan's welfare queen.
In Chicago, they found a woman who holds the record. She used 80 names, 30 addresses, 15 telephone numbers to collect food stamps, Social Security, veterans benefits for 4 non-existent deceased veterans' husbands, as well as welfare. Her tax-free cash income alone has been running $150,000 a year.
Ronald Wilson Reagan, the actor turned Republican politician, would launch a political campaign for governor and then president that focused on a number of issues facing the country at the time. For this video, we are going to focus on his attack on the welfare system. Reagan believed that the country's welfare system was in need of reform. He argued that the welfare system made people too dependent on government assistance and promoted poverty, which were mostly unsubstantiated claims. As you heard in the audio clip, Reagan used the story of Linda White as evidence of the need for welfare reform, turning the actions of the single criminal into a long-lasting stereotype. Whether intentional or not, Reagan created a dog whistle that would permeate the conversation about social programs in the U.S. for decades to come. What is a dog whistle? Before I move on, I want to address something, which is, what the heck is a dog whistle? You may have heard about the recent outcry about the Sydney Sweeney jeans ad or the Pantone color of the year, and within those conversations heard the term dog whistle. In the context of talking about politics, a dog whistle basically means using terminology or language that is subversive and doesn't really give you the full meaning of the term being used. It is suggestive media or language in which most people would not recognize the subtext of the message. For example, the term family values, which is heavily used in conservative speech, is vague and appealing. Most people, regardless of political association, would agree with the concept of strengthening family values, like providing a stable home, having loving parents, and children that are well cared for. Except what the Conservative Party considers family values almost always coincide with social ideas such as heteronormative households, traditional gender roles, and pro-birth sentiment. Saying, "I believe in family values," does not sound as discriminatory as, "I believe only a man and woman should be allowed to get married." A dog whistle is a term that actively diminishes or hides the more specific message. Reagan's reference to the Chicago Tribune article about Linda Taylor and subsequent use of the term welfare queen would become a dog whistle in referencing single black mothers who utilize government assistance. The idea of a welfare queen painted women of color to be lazy, irresponsible frauds who reveled in using taxpayer money for their own benefit. The American people, who had previously understood welfare recipients as primarily white and working class, which they demographically were, now saw welfare recipients as primarily black and female. The welfare queen image did not exist in a vacuum. It played into two long-held stereotypes about women, African Americans, and low-income people. The stereotype of the welfare queen was an evolution or an addition to another stereotype about black women in the United States. In 18th and 19th century America, through the legal system of slavery, white slave owners owned black women as property and regularly degraded and plundered their bodies. Black women would sometimes become pregnant by white men and were often sold into prostitution and forced to become objects of white men's sexual conquest. Out of this brutality grew the Jezebel stereotype, the promiscuous, predatory, overly sexual black woman. Accompanying the Jezebel stereotype were similarly erroneous and offensive stereotypes of black women, such as those of the lazy or angry black woman. These stereotypes were reflective of the paradoxical portrayal black women faced: lazy, promiscuous, ignorant, when it was white men who kept women in these circumstances to begin with. It is victim blaming at its finest. The Aid to Dependent Children, ADC, created in 1935 by FDR, which later became Aid to Families with Dependent Children, the AFDC, was a program which greatly supported single white mothers. But the AFDC did not affect white people and people of color the same way. Because it was a state-run program, eligibility differed throughout the country. The separate but equal doctrine of 1896 and Jim Crow laws prohibited the black population from fully utilizing the program in many states. Fast forward to the 60s and 70s, when the advent of televised media showed images of poverty that mainly featured Black and brown recipients versus white ones, skewing the public opinion on the welfare system. The image of poverty, which had previously been one of a rural white man or a divorced white mother, now became one of an unwed urban Black woman. In the years following, gendered, radicalized welfare discourse only became more volatile, and welfare rights movements were systematically destroyed. Overemphasizing welfare fraud became a significant point of strategy for some campaigning politicians such as Ronald Reagan. Reagan was able to paint welfare as a Black problem, despite the fact that the majority of welfare recipients are white. In creating a narrative about welfare recipients which drew on slavery-era stereotypes about Black women, Ronald Reagan mobilized white supremacy against welfare, a mobilization which aimed to destroy existing and potential solidarity among welfare recipients. White supremacy gave Reagan the power to erode the American welfare state without facing strong white working-class opposition. Many of Reagan's claims about Linda Taylor were conjecture, but that didn't matter. Reagan struck a chord with the welfare queen narrative, and what mattered then was not what was actually true, but what people believed to be true. In 1981, Reagan cut funding to the AFDC and encouraged states to impose their own restrictions, such as workforce training, classes, etc., when it came to distributing aid. These restrictions made it even harder for people of color to receive welfare, and yet they were still the poster child for the system. The revival of the welfare queen. In 1996, during the Clinton administration, the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act was passed. This bill essentially ended the AFDC and replaced it with Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, otherwise known as TANF. This act was proposed in response to the growing concern within the nation that welfare programs and government assistance were encouraging out-of-wedlock births and teen pregnancies. However, as Marissa Chappell from the University of Pennsylvania writes in her book, The War on Welfare, Family, Poverty, and Politics in Modern America, sociologists, poverty analysts, and ethnographers have demonstrated the AFDC itself had little impact on women's marital or childbearing decisions, and the program acted, for most recipients, as a supplement to earnings or as a temporary source of support between periods of employment. TANF enforced strict work requirements and restricted monetary assistance to 2 consecutive years, with a 5-year overall limit, which maybe seems fair on paper until you consider things like childcare needs, skills training needs, rising housing costs, medical bills, and more. TANF operated on the notion that help makes people weak, and that the poor should just pull themselves up by their bootstraps. These policies treated unfortunate and often uncontrollable life circumstances as moral failures. Clinton celebrated the bill, despite facing many dissenting voices from his own party about it. At the signing of the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act, President Clinton was flanked by 2 women, one of whom was Lily Hardin. Lily was from Arkansas, where Clinton was formerly governor, and had once been a recipient of assistance through the AFDC. Lily Hardin was a Black Arkansas mother who had spent time in the AFDC program. When Bill Clinton met her at an event, he was instantly impressed by her story. Hardin had gone from being on welfare to having a job at a supermarket. For Clinton, she was the perfect poster woman for his welfare reform plans. Clinton cited her repeatedly in his pitches for the Personal Responsibility Bill. He dwelled particularly on something she had told him about why she was proud to have a job instead of living on welfare. When my boy goes to school and they say, "What does your mama do for a living?" he can give an answer. Clinton invited Hardin to the signing ceremony for the welfare bill, where she was seated next to him as he eliminated the AFDC. However, Lily's story does not have a happy ending. In 2002, just 6 years after Clinton's welfare reform passed, Lily suffered a stroke. While she was no longer relying on the AFDC at the time of her stroke, Lily was still struggling with poverty. When she submitted her application for Medicaid, now under Clinton's reform, she was denied, despite having been on it previously with the AFDC. This meant that her medication was going to cost a whopping $450 a month, a cost she simply could not afford. She died in 2014 at the age of 59. Lily's experience was not isolated. TANF did not accept pursuing higher education as a workforce requirement, unlike its predecessor, the AFDC, which led most impoverished mothers into taking low-wage jobs that provided no opportunity for growth or comprehensive income. TANF essentially became a damned if you do, damned if you don't program, where even if you tried to get out of the system, you were still struggling. And the benefits provided by TANF to working mothers was measly at best, with the average being $400 a month for a family of 3. In some states, it was as low as $193 a month. The repeated stripping of government assistance in the decades since the introduction of the AFDC have left many in this country in the constant loop of poverty. Overwhelmingly, the states with the strictest TANF requirements often have the largest populations of African Americans. South Carolina, Texas, Mississippi, just to name a few. The perverse idea that poverty in the U.S. was always and solely a black issue, and not the direct result of intentional villainization of a particular type of person by politicians across the board, is exactly why welfare reform has never truly been successful. Linda Taylor was an isolated and extreme case. Lily Hardin was not. Lily Hardin did everything right, and the system still failed her. How is one supposed to pull themselves up by their bootstraps if they don't even have bootstraps to begin with? The idea that single black mothers are out to take your hard-earned tax money is simply not true. It is an echo of a larger-than-life story that had little to do with the actual reality of poverty in the U.S. So the next time you hear the term welfare queen, I beg you to remember that there was only ever one true welfare queen. Relying on assistance to make ends meet is not a crime, and the systems in place to help you through hard times were not designed with you in mind. Struggling right now, I get it. I'm there too. I've utilized government assistance more than I ever thought I'd ever have to in my life. And I just want you to know that it's okay to ask for help and it's okay to be worried. And I'm going to try and find some resources to leave in the description, so check the description box for that. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I don't know what this channel is going to be, but you know what? I'm just going to make whatever I want to make, and this is what I wanted to make. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Bye!